You are watching A News. I'm Katie Wilson. Here are the top stories. Canada, Mexico and the European Union are pushing back against the US's decision to increase tariffs on goods. Germany's Conservative and Social Democratic parties have launched initial discussions on forming a coalition government. North Korea's Kim Jong-un orders nuclear readiness after missile test. Canada, Mexico and the European Union are pushing back against the US's decision to increase tariffs on goods. With the March the 4th deadline approaching, concerns over supply chain disruptions, rising consumer prices and a potential global trade war are escalating.
Canada and Mexico are pushing back against the United States' increase of tariffs deadline fast approaching next week. It follows US President Donald Trump's tax increase on imported goods at 25%. Trump says it's to curb illegal immigration and drug trafficking, particularly fentanyl. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau warns that Ottawa would retaliate swiftly if tariffs take effect.
Months now I've been emphasizing that less than 1% of the fentanyl that arrives in the United States comes from Canada. But we know that even that 1% or less than 1% should be reduced, which is why we've invested $1.3 billion in strengthening our border capacities with Black Hawk helicopters, with drones, with 10,000 people patrolling our borders and keeping Canadians and Americans safe. If on Tuesday there are unjustified tariffs brought in on Canada, we will have an immediate and extremely strong response, as Canadians expect.
In Mexico City, President Claudia Sheinbaum hopes for a resolution through negotiations.
The goal is to protect the trade treaty between Mexico, the US and Canada, and within this frame see what actions to take to strengthen the three economies. So Mexican ministers in Washington, D.C. have studied the issues thoroughly, and there have been previous discussions, so I hope we can reach an agreement, and on March 4th we can announce another thing.
Trump confirmed that tariffs would proceed as planned, despite speculation of a delay. In addition, he says he'll impose a 25% tariff on European Union imports. The European Commission says it would react immediately against unjustified barriers to free and fair trade. The EU says tariffs risk disrupting supply chains, raising consumer prices and slowing economic growth. With retaliatory measures from Canada, Mexico and the EU, fears of a global trade war are mounting as the 4th of March deadline is next week.
The Chinese Foreign Ministry called for dialogue between China and the United States as an additional 10% in US tariffs on all Chinese products kicked in. Chinese ministry spokesperson Lin Jian said Beijing deplores and firmly opposes the latest US tariffs. In response, China will impose counter-tariffs of up to 15% on some US imports, starting on February 10th. Lin also stated that addressing the fentanyl crisis requires reducing domestic demand and strengthening law enforcement cooperation. Meanwhile, US President Donald Trump said he is in no rush to speak with Chinese President Xi Jinping to ease the trade war between the two nations.
The United States uses the fentanyl issue as a pretext to levy 10% tariffs on imports. China deplores and firmly opposes it. The measures that China takes is necessary to protect its legitimate rights and interests. Trade wars and tariff wars have no winners. Threatening China with pressure leads nowhere. China urges the United States to correct its wrongdoings, solve each other's concerns through equal-footed consultation, and promote the sound, stable and sustainable development of US-China relations.
British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer is in Washington, where he and President Donald Trump praised their strong strategic partnership. The leaders discussed progress on the Russia-Ukraine conflict, trade and US-UK relations.
Great Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer was in Washington on Thursday, where he and President Donald Trump praised each other for being steadfast strategic partners. He's one tough negotiator. That's how President Trump referred to the British Prime Minister in a joint press conference following extensive discussions on a number of issues, including trade and the war in Ukraine. In that press conference, President Trump said that he thinks a great deal of progress has been made towards a peace deal in the Ukraine-Russia conflict, and that he hopes that that deal will lay the foundation for stability in Eastern Europe. President Trump said that he will sign a mineral rights deal with Ukrainian President Zelensky on Friday that will make the U.S. a major partner in developing rare earth minerals. The agreement, the president said, is a win-win both for the United States and Ukraine. Prime Minister Starmer thanked President Trump for his leadership and said that this trip to America had been productive. The United Kingdom has a true friend in the Oval Office, and the bust of Winston Churchill is back in the White House, the British Prime Minister remarked to the press. He also said that the UK's relationship with the US matters now more than ever, referring to the transatlantic special relationship as being critical to countering mutual threats wherever they may arise to both countries. Starmer thanked President Trump for bringing about the possibility of a peace deal to the Ukraine war, saying that the United Kingdom will continue to work with the U.S. to ensure that any peace deal lasts and becomes a historic deal that no side breaches. Starmer also presented an unprecedented invitation by the British monarchy to President Trump for a second state visit to the United Kingdom. Trump accepted the invitation and said that he looks forward to returning to the United Kingdom. Starmer stressed that, quote, "we have to win the peace" when it comes to the war in Ukraine, and said that he was confident that the US and the UK were on the same page when it comes to European security. President Trump acknowledged that Starmer is increasing his country's defense spending and said that he was confident that the two leaders will soon hammer out a trade agreement that should be concluded in the near future. Starmer declared that the United Kingdom is ready to put boots on the ground and planes in the air, as he put it, to support a peace deal in Ukraine alongside its allies. He said, Trump is right, Europe must step up, the UK is all in. I'm Uwe Shabander for A News, Washington, D.C.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to meet US President Donald Trump in the White House today to sign a deal on sharing his country's mineral resources. Zelensky has described the agreement as preliminary and said he wants further agreements which include US security guarantees to deter Russia.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will visit Washington to sign a key agreement with the United States focused on rare earth minerals. He confirmed the deal would be finalized during his visit.
This deal could be a great success, or it could pass quietly. And the big success depends on our conversation with President Trump.
The US President, Donald Trump, described the deal as very big and emphasized that it includes not only rare earth minerals, but other elements of mutual interest. Sources close to the negotiations revealed to Reuters that this minerals deal is central to Ukraine's efforts to secure continued US support, especially as President Trump pushes for a rapid end to the ongoing war with Russia.
President Zelensky is going to be coming on Friday. That's now confirmed, and we're going to be signing an agreement, which will be a very big agreement. And I want to thank Howard and Scott for the job you guys did in putting it together. You really did an amazing job. And that'll be on rare earth and other things.
Despite optimism surrounding the minerals deal, concerns persist over the US reluctance to include explicit security guarantees for Ukraine, a key demand from Kyiv, with one source stating that the US opposed adding such provisions to the agreement. Earlier drafts of the agreement saw significant pushback from Ukraine, particularly when Washington sought rights to Ukraine's natural resources worth an estimated $500 billion. Kyiv rejected this, arguing that the US had provided far less in aid, and the deal did not adequately address the security concerns critical to Ukraine's sovereignty.
The Trump administration said it is eliminating more than 90% of the US Agency for International Development's foreign aid contracts and $60 billion in overall US assistance around the world. The planned cuts halted thousands of programs and at least 1,600 US aid staff have been fired. President Donald Trump and Elon Musk claim foreign aid is unnecessary spending, With legal challenges already underway, non-profit organisations warn there could be more contract terminations. Thousands are rallying across Greece, demanding justice from the government on the second anniversary of the country's deadliest train crash.
Thousands are protesting on the streets of Greece, demanding justice on the second anniversary of the deadly Tempe train crash that took the lives of 57 people and left dozens injured. Protesters are holding the government accountable for both the crash and its aftermath. Strikes have caused severe disruptions nationwide, with all international and domestic flights grounded, rail services cancelled, ferries halted, and public transportation affected. Train drivers, doctors, lawyers, and teachers joined a 24-hour general strike to honor the crash victims. According to a recent inquiry, the safety gaps that contributed to the disaster have still not been addressed. Additionally, a separate judicial investigation remains unfinished, with no one yet convicted for the accident. The ongoing lack of accountability has led to growing public concern over safety, while some protesters are demanding justice and systemic change, vowing not to stop until government policies are reformed.
We will not stop fighting until all political and criminal liability is attributed to everyone responsible for this crime. We will continue until we see the end of these policies that cause new crimes like the one at Tempe everywhere.
We want to send the message to the government and the employers that we will not tolerate anymore going to work and not knowing if we are going to get back home alive.
With tensions rising, authorities have deployed over 5,000 police officers in the capital to manage crowds and prevent potential unrest. The protests have placed the government officials in a difficult position as victims' families continue to criticize its refusal to launch a parliamentary inquiry into political accountability.
Top leaders from Germany's Conservatives and Social Democrats have begun preliminary talks on forming a coalition government. Friedrich Merz, leader of the Conservative bloc that won Sunday's election, aims to form a government before April 20th, a challenging deadline given the differences in parties' views. Meanwhile, a prominent SPD politician, Manuela Schwesig, emphasised the need to avoid the mistakes of past governments, urging both sides to focus on economic progress and social security rather than party interests. Around the world, people are continuing to pray for Pope Francis. While his condition remains serious, the Vatican says he's improving. The 88-year-old pontiff remains hospitalised at Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he has been receiving intensive care treatment during the last 2 weeks.
The Vatican's latest statement, released on Thursday, confirms that Pope Francis's condition is improving. However, doctors remain cautious, maintaining a guarded prognosis due to the complexity of his medical situation. While the 88-year-old continues to receive high-flow oxygen and respiratory physiotherapy to clear his lungs, no further respiratory crises have occurred since last Saturday, easing speculation about his condition. Despite his illness, the Vatican says that the pontiff has been able to continue some work from his hospital room. Meanwhile, around the world, prayers and vigils are being held. Hundreds of worshippers remain gathered in St. Peter's Square.
I'm not religious myself, but I do definitely feel a gravity to it, you know, and the truth is that he's not well, but he is a very old man, so, you know, what can be done, really, you know, it's, I'm not sad because I think it's a life that's been lived to the full. He's been Pope, you know, but what will happen next, I'm not very sure.
Let's see how it goes. I mean, he's still a human. We hope the best for him. And if he manages to come back, which I think it's possible once he has very good doctors with him, I think we'll see him here for Easter. That's what we can hope for, I guess. Even as a non-Catholic, he's a figure which I have lots of sympathy, so I really wish him to be the best he can very soon.
Similar displays of devotion and solidarity have been seen globally. In Madrid, a mural featuring children's messages of encouragement was displayed as a symbol of hope and unity.
Mama Mary visiting Elizabeth.
In India, Catholic communities, particularly in eastern Assam, lit candles and held evening prayers. Across Latin America, Catholics have been gathering in churches and iconic sites. In Rio de Janeiro, the iconic Christ the Redeemer statue was illuminated with images of Pope Francis and messages of support in multiple languages. Pope Francis has led the Catholic Church since 2013 and is the first pontiff from the Americas. His health has been a subject of concern in recent years, particularly due to his history of respiratory issues. He had part of one lung removed as a young man. With Easter approaching at the end of April, uncertainty grows over whether he'll be able to lead the Holy Week services, which traditionally involves outdoor processions and prayers.
As Ramadan begins, markets in Jerusalem and the West Bank are seeing lower sales due to rising tensions in the region. Vendors attribute the downturn to Israeli military operations and political unrest, with many areas lacking the usual decorations and festive atmosphere.
As the Muslim holy month of Ramadan is set to begin, markets in Jerusalem and the West Bank are seeing fewer buyers, with vendors reporting a significant drop in sales. Unlike previous years, markets remain unpacked, and the usual festive decorations and lights around the cities have not been put up, reflecting the tense atmosphere. Vendors attribute the decline in sales to Israeli checkpoints, military operations in the West Bank, and the overall political situation in the region.
Today the situation is different. We had very busy days, markets were packed with people, eating and drinking with some tranquility, but currently the situation is completely different.
The situation is bad. There is a lack of work, a lack of shopping, people are in debt, and there are no preparations for Ramadan. There is no joy of Ramadan even.
In Jerusalem, the Waqf and Al-Aqsa Mosque Affairs Department have installed covers in the Al-Aqsa Mosque courtyards to protect worshippers from the rain and winter weather.
We contracted committees to organise the entry and exit of worshippers, maintain segregation and safety of worshippers and guide them to the prayer areas. There will also be Scout members present every Friday and organise the worshippers and aid on Fridays. We also met with the Palestine Red Crescent that will deploy field clinics inside the courtyards of Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Earlier, Israel announced that it will impose safety restrictions at the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound during Ramadan, including limiting access to certain groups. Last year, only men over 55 years old, women aged above 50, and children 12 and under were allowed entry to the mosque for security reasons. Thousands of Israeli police officers were deployed across Jerusalem's Old City, and similar measures are expected to be enforced again.
Meanwhile, there are concerns for the 59 hostages still held in Gaza by Hamas. Israeli authorities believe that 24 people are still alive. It comes as negotiations for the second phase of the ceasefire begin in Egypt.
Israelis in Tel Aviv lay down flowers and candles at the hostages' square, while worried for the remaining 59 people still held in Gaza. Hamas returned 4 Israeli bodies this week, and hundreds of Palestinians were released from Israeli prisons, which marked the final exchange under the first phase of the Gaza ceasefire.
I hope very much either that there is a new phase of the ceasefire or that they can continue with the current arrangement. I know there are some political difficulties with moving to the next phase and what it implies, but at the moment it's a tragic situation for everyone. It's tragic for the hostages, the families of the hostages, but it's also tragic for the Palestinians who are suffering so much at the moment as well. So it's just bad for everyone. So I hope very much we can move to a new peaceful phase.
Talks on the second phase of the ceasefire have begun in Cairo as the first phase ends on Saturday. It's hoped it'll get extended, but many are uncertain about the future.
Worst scenario is that those who are alive won't be alive and that some of them will never return. And maybe we won't even know what happened with them.
The condition of those released in recent weeks has fueled public outrage in Israel, adding pressure on the government.
Everybody wants to live here, peace, not to care about terrorists and war. I want a peace.
The public is pushing for the continuation of the ceasefire to secure the release of the remaining hostages, while some within the government are calling for a return to military action against Hamas. Meanwhile, Hamas says it's ready for talks on the second phase of the ceasefire.
North Korea has once again flexed its military muscle, with state-run broadcaster KRT releasing images of leader Kim Jong-un overseeing the test launch of a strategic cruise missile. According to state media, Kim Jong-un has ordered full readiness to use the country's nuclear attack capability, describing it as the most effective means of defence. The test, North Korea claims, was meant to send a warning to what it calls enemies, who threaten its security and escalate confrontation. Photos released by KRT show Kim Jong-un observing the test from a military command post, surrounded by top officials. The missile was reportedly launched over the West Sea of Korea and successfully hit its target. Nations have agreed to mobilise $200 billion annually to protect biodiversity. The deal, finalised at COP16 in Rome this week, supports the 30 by 30 target to conserve land and oceans. Talks resumed after delays from last year's session in Colombia. After intense negotiations, delegates reached a consensus, which was met with applause. The US remains outside the UN Biodiversity Pact. However, negotiators stressed global cooperation to fund conservation efforts. The agreement marks a major step towards financing nature protection worldwide. Brazil is urging BRICS member countries to push for ambitious outcomes at COP30, warning of record high temperatures and greenhouse gas emissions. Lula called for collective efforts to promote peace and reform the multilateral security system, warning that unilateralism destabilizes international order. He proposed a BRICS-led initiative to combat neglected tropical diseases and stressed the importance of strengthening global health governance, particularly the World Health Organization, to ensure equitable access to medicines and vaccines. On climate change, Lula urged BRICS nations to push for ambitious goals at COP30, stressing the need to align economic growth with social and environmental justice. He also advocated for dismantling trade barriers in the face of rising protectionism and called for reforms to the global financial system. The president further highlighted Brazil's leadership role in leading COP30 discussions later this year. Hollywood is mourning the loss of legendary actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy Arakawa. The couple were found dead in their Santa Fe home on Wednesday. Authorities say the 95-year-old Oscar winner and his 64-year-old wife appeared to have been deceased for some time. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office confirmed that Hackman and Arakawa were discovered in separate rooms. A maintenance worker who found the bodies reported the home's front door was ajar, but there were no signs of forced entry. Sheriff Adan Menzoza says that while no immediate signs of foul play were found, investigators have not ruled anything out.
I can't do a lot of these. What I did state was there was no obvious sign or indication of a foul play. There was no immediate sign of foul play. I haven't ruled that out yet. This is an investigation, so we're keeping everything on the table. I think the autopsy is going to tell us a lot, and any evidence that we collect, but I haven't ruled any of that out yet.
Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost spacecraft has captured incredible footage of the moon's surface, including the far side of the moon, as it prepares for its upcoming landing on Sunday.
Breathtaking close-up views of the moon's surface have been captured by Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost spacecraft. It was launched on the 15th of January and is currently on a 45-day mission to collect data as part of NASA's lunar exploration effort. The spacecraft entered the lunar orbit on the 13th of February, and during one of its engine burns, it captured rare footage of the far side of the moon, an area that can't be seen from Earth. After travelling 3.54 million kilometres, it's hoped the Blue Ghost will land on the moon's surface, together with 10 scientific instruments. These will collect data and dust, as well as take X-rays to gather information to find out more about the planet.
Thanks for joining us. Keep watching A News for the latest, and we'll be back before you know it.